on my bookshelf at the moment, I've got my coaching shelf, so that's got my team coaching, it's got facilitation, it's got the systems coaching, all of that stuff. But then I've got my personal interest, which is in a lot of the concepts, the new concepts that are coming out, whether that's grit, or for a while it was the growth mindset, or all of those types of books, habits and things like that kind of complement what we're doing in the room.
My biggest, best go-to recommendation is Gay Hendricks' The Big Leap. I just think it's something different for leaders. So rather than reading the classic leadership and management books, what Gay Hendricks does is he talks about zone of genius. So it's about absolutely tapping into where you are exceptional and where you deliver the most value. And what can happen for executives is they get drawn into what they're good at, what they're great at, and what they can do. What's more important is that that gets delegated downwards through the organisation so that they can focus on what they're exceptional at. If we can get more executives working in their zone of genius, the impact is potentially phenomenal.
Okay, so on my bookshelf are a lot of books by a psychologist called Edgar Schein, and he was a real pioneer in terms of occupational or organisational psychology, and came up with the concept that we are all operating at a level of behaviours, which is all we can see, and underneath that beliefs that we have and we've developed, and underneath that are core values. And so he developed the concept that we have to be considering all three and ensure that all three are working in harmony with each other.
In terms of reading, like most coaches, I've got a shelf full of books, but one that, well, in fact there's two by this author that I really love, and the author is a lady called Nancy Kline, and she wrote a book called Time to Think and another book called More Time to Think, and I think those books are just fantastic reads for coaches, absolutely, but also for leaders and people in business, just to understand the importance of giving the space, letting people think through problems, and she does that beautifully. A really worthwhile read.
The one book that I regularly recommend to leaders is the book by Graham Lee on breakthrough conversations. And what I particularly love about this book is the fact that Graham describes really well all the neuroscience and neurobiology that goes on in our bodies when we are having what he describes as red conversations. These are the conversations that we often leave and we think, that didn't quite go as I really wanted it to go. And then what he encourages people to do is to recognise their green states. These are the states where we're able to be much more reflective, much more open, and therefore have much more productive conversations with the people that we interact with on a regular basis. So this book really helps people appreciate the way that our emotions get played out in our bodies, and then the way that it influences our behaviours, and how actually we can actively learn to manage that so that we have much, much more productive conversations as leaders.
My go-to book that I return to often and recommend to others is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And basically what he's saying is that we need to stop thinking in order to achieve happiness, fulfillment, and a degree of sanity in this world. So what he says is that the cause of our problems is actually incessant negative thinking. So getting out of that helps us in this world. Great book.
I suppose I'd recommend a brilliant book which really helped me when I was struggling a bit at KPMG, which is Buddhism Made Simple by Steve Hagen, which is about accepting things for what they are, fundamentally. It sounds more technical than it is. It's actually a very, very easy and accessible way of understanding the principles of Buddhism.
So I think Man's Search for Meaning is a wonderful book written by Viktor Frankl. For me, the key part on that is around choice and intentionality. Actually enabling leaders to realise actually they have a choice in terms of how they show up, how they behave, the actions they take. To really radically owning that feels really important.
The book that I find myself recommending to my clients the most frequently is The One Thing by Gary Keller. And it's a really cute, small book, and it really focuses and helps us prioritize on what is that one thing that is going to make everything else easier. And there are so many little concepts and diagrams in that book. I highly recommend you go and have a look at it. And I think it's just so apt for a lot of the challenges that my clients are facing around prioritization, etc.
The one that I've just downloaded actually is by Brené Brown. It's called Imperfect. And she's very good at reminding us that we don't have to be perfect and we don't have to have all the answers. So that's right up my street.
A huge fan of Brené Brown, Dare to Lead. Loads of excellent practical frameworks and ideas to bring to meetings to get more collaboration, cohesion, engagement. Great book for workplace culture. And Priya Parker, she writes The Art of Gathering. And again, you know, if you're bringing together groups of people, what's the purpose around that?
I've got another book on my shelf that I've been meaning to read for some time. Many people may have heard of Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner for a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, which is a great read. But his second book is called Noise, and that's sitting there for me to read. His first book was all about human biases and how our brains tend to think fast most of the time based on experiences in the past. And actually, sometimes we need to slow down and think more rationally and logically through a problem.
For new leaders, The First 90 Days by Watkins I think is brilliant. It's a sort of lovely series of approaches and series of tools for a new leader going into a new role, particularly at senior levels, and I found that really helpful for many people. And probably a personal favourite is a book called Upgrade, which is all around helping leaders embrace and step into complexity. It's almost like a how-to book where you step into it, you experience it rather than just something which is read.
So I've got David Bohm's On Dialogue next on my reading stack. I've brought it into London with me today, and that is ultimately, so I haven't read it yet, but it's ultimately about dialogue. It's about bringing solutions through conversation, because ultimately that's what I think coaching is. So I'm hoping to glean some insights from that.